Whew, I finally have it. It's been a long journey getting here, but I finally have something that resembles a real-time strategy game. So these past few weeks I've been working on the resource gathering mechanics, and I've actually gone in a slightly fresh take on a true and tried classic. So if you're watching the footage right now and you're wondering, what are these numbers that are over the buildings, and what are these options that the peasant has, well then, just stay tuned to find out.
Это мой путь, брат, моя игра. Она мне принадлежит и таким же, как и я. Моя игра, она мне принадлежит и таким же, как и я. Моя игра. Здесь правила одни и цель одна.
So at first glance, the resource gathering mechanics are exactly as you remember from classics like Age of Empires or Warcraft. You know, basically the greats that define the RTS genre. The main difference is that instead of global storage, the resources are stored locally. And I'm going to explain what that means. So in a game like Age of Empires, it looks very similar to this. The harvesters, they gather the wood, then they bring the wood to, you know, the nearest woodcutter's camp or the nearest town center. And at that point, the wood disappears and it basically goes into a magical global pile of some number that you see in the top right corner or wherever it is in the current versions. So in my game, they bring the wood to this here storage site, and then the wood, it stays in this here storage site. So we see here that this storage site, so far it's accumulated 28 wood. This one has accumulated 8 wood. This one has accumulated 42 wood and 16 iron. The storage sites, they have a capacity. So once this storage site, is housing 600 wood, the peasants can no longer use it as a drop-off site. They will be forced to, go to the next closest one that's able to house the wood. So basically, the wood, first, it's in its unextracted state within the tree. Next, when the peasant has chopped some of it, it takes a few swipes for the peasant to actually get the wood. But basically, let's see, yeah, once he's extracted, say 1 wood, that 1 wood is inside of the peasant.
Before I went in, I said, no homo, y'all.
Not inside, but he's carrying it in a huge backpack. Then the peasant can drop it off at any storage site that he wishes to. Say I tell him to drop it off here. He goes here, and now he added 1 wood there. Now there's 1 wood in this storage site here. And if the enemy comes and they kill this storage site, the wood there is lost. And the point, or not the point, but another aspect of this mechanic is that in order to use the resources, you have to consolidate them at a single point. So you cannot just magically subtract, a number from the global, the magic global resource pile. You have to, consolidate a number of different resources at a single location where they're going to be used. For example, say I want to build a farm. In my game, building a farm requires wood. Say I want to build another farm right here along these other farms. So in order to build the farm, I'm going to need to bring wood to its location. So the peasants, they are going to go to all the nearest storage sites that have wood, and they're going to keep ferrying wood here up until they have 80, because in this current build I'm still working on all the balance, I'm still working on all the numbers, but basically their carrying capacity is very low, it's 2, and their gathering is very slow. So I started off by having, faster gathering and them having like 10 resources, but I'm working on the balance. Right, but anyways, we see here the peasants, they start, ferrying back and forth between basically all the storage sites that have wood. right? And because this one like occasionally gets some wood by this one lone guy, let's tell him to go right there, just to not distract these guys. So these guys are basically kind of making a little caravan from the closest storage site to the build site, and they're ferrying the wood back and forth up until they get it right at, right at the desired amount, the required amount. Let's meanwhile get these guys to gather some food. And I guess the farms are a little bit different in Age of Empires, meaning that you don't go on top of the farm, but honestly, this is just, it's easier to code. It doesn't have to be a special case, and it's just a little bit different. And anyways, here we see that the peasants have brought enough resources, and when there was enough resources at the build site, then they could begin construction. And I hope you guys noticed here, while I was talking about something else, is that, well, I didn't have to baby the peasants to manually tell them to do every single step, right? I told them, I right-clicked on the building, like build it, and they know, like, okay, it needs these resources. They get the resources, and when they're done bringing the resources, they start building it. Here again, they had some wood on them, and I told them go farm. Since they cannot carry 2 different resources at one time, they will first drop off their old resources and then go to the farm. So it's all these, I'm working on a lot of these kind of small touches to kind of make the peasants nice to control, right? So you don't have to, baby them. So you don't have to do every single step manually. So you kind of right click and do some action, and they will, they will act intelligently about it. At least that's the intent. And so I talked about the storage sites and how they have, a current amount of the different resources, and they have a capacity. So you guys are probably thinking, what is this third number here? The third number is the desired amount of every resource that the storage site wants to have. And we can, that's player configurable. So here, say put, we want to have, 80 iron, or 80 iron in this storage site. So now the desired amount of iron is set to 80. And another aspect of this mechanic is of, the resource gathering mechanic, is that, well, you have to, sometimes you want to transport resources from one location to another. You want, say, store the resources close to your barracks or close to where you're going to store them. So I can have this, what's this button here, the transport button, or I can just, right click, and the peasants, they will fulfill the desired amount of iron of that storage site. So up until it exceeds 80, they will keep going to the nearest storage site in order to, get iron from there and bring it here. And I know immediately some of you guys are thinking, it's just one button. You just clicked one button, and there wasn't any like kind of choice there. Like, say, what if I also say that there needs to be 100 food? So when I tell them to transport resources there, like, are they going to choose food or are they going to choose iron? Another aspect is, okay, say I have a lot of these different storage sites, all over the map. Like, how are they just always going to choose the nearest one? What if that's not exactly what I want? Can I have more fine-tuned control over that? And the answer is yes. So just as the storage sites have, a configuration screen for the desired amount of resources, the peasants and all kind of harvester transporter units have a configuration screen to configure their transportation behavior. So on the left side, we see a priority list. Basically, this is the order in which they will bring resources to the storage site. Here we see food is above iron. which we can change, right? We can make it the lowest, but for now let's leave it the highest. So when we tell them to, bring resources here, they will start with food, and when they're done with food, they will move on to iron, because that is the highest priority resource that this storage site needs. On the right side, we see something called the strategy. And by the way, I'm going to tooltip everything in this game, right? All the buttons are going to be tooltipped. There's going to be tooltips here. There's going to be a tutorial. There's going to be a help, window, right? Don't worry about that for now, because I understand that it is kind of complex. But anyways, the strategy is there's three options. The first is to prioritize the nearest. When this is set, the peasants will always go to the nearest storage site that has, the resource that they're looking for, the highest priority resource that is desired by the storage site, by the target storage site. The next option is to prioritize excess. This means that they will only take resources from storage sites that have where the stored amount is higher than the desired amount, right? So for now, for example, I go here and I set the iron, the desired amount of iron to 600. So in this way, since this storage site only has 146 iron, but desires to have 600 iron, then if I momentarily set iron as higher priority than wood, when I tell them to transport, they'll skip over this one and it'll go straight to this one that has 128 iron, but it desires 0. And this guy, okay, he spazzed out a little bit, but he still made it. So in this way, basically just having these parameters, like the desired amounts on every single storage site, and this priority list, and this option of strategies, I'm able to basically, orchestrate the distribution of resources in very sophisticated ways. Basically, pretty much anything you could want, you could you could realize using just these options and configurations. And the final strategy is to prioritize gathering. So, and prioritize gathering means that as much as possible, the peasants will aim to just directly, mine or chop or extract the resource and then bring it to the storage site to meet the desires of the storage site. And another unit that I have here is this transport cart. Let me just quickly get these guys going, and then I'm going to talk about the transport cart. So the transport cart is another kind of unit that cannot gather or extract resources on its own. It does not have the gather button. All it can do is transport resources, and it has basically a bigger carrying capacity. So it's used for setting up, basically ferrying resources, between different points on the map. So here, since we know, just one example, right? We know that, here's our farming area, and the farms, they require wood to build. So we probably want, in these storage sites, to have some wood. So when these farms are exhausted, and they eventually will be, they have, I think in this current build, like 400 food each. But anyways, I'm going to be tuning all the numbers. So say we want, wood in these two storage sites, so that when the farms run out, we kind of are well positioned to rebuild them quickly and efficiently, and we don't have to go across the map to get the wood. So I guess, okay, first of all, let's get to chopping some wood here. Yeah, I was gonna do an example, but I forgot to get these guys to start chopping. And here's another element that I want to bring attention to. When I told all these guys to chop a single tree, they first made us around over this tree to, you know, respect your orders as much as they can. But when there was no more space around this tree, then they spilled over onto the nearest ones. So this is another example of, you know, how the peasants, you know, behave more or less intelligently, or as intelligently as I possibly can make them, and they keep going back. And another aspect that I want to kind of bring your attention to is that, you know, the peasants, they don't phase through each other. They actually keep doing, you know, real-time collision avoidance, right? So as you could see, like when they break this caravan, they kind of, you know, they bump into each other a little bit. They do these little high fives. This guy, you know, kind of goes around, right? But the point is, like, their areas, their sizes are respected, right? So I think a lot, you know, the most famous example is StarCraft, right? In StarCraft, when the workers go to gather resources, they phase through each other. And the reason for that is super simple. When they're making the first version of the game, they just could not get the pathfinding to work well enough for the peasants not to basically, you know, completely crap out when they're going back and forth between a resource and a storage location, right? So here I've kind of more or less addressed the problem. Now it's not 100% perfect, right? There's still some scenarios where, you know, there's some stuckage and the units kind of spaz a little bit, but these cases are relatively low, right? There's very few of these cases, and in general, you know, as on the whole, as you guys have seen in this video, you know, the peasants are, you know, they behave pretty well. Now back to the storage site. So say I want them to keep bringing wood here, and I've planned out, I said in my mind, okay, I have this kind of supply chain. These guys get the wood, they bring it here, you know, as an intermediate storage location. And then the wood, I want these guys to ferry the wood from here to here. So by default, if I just tell them to supply this location, they're gonna go here because this has some wood and this is like physically closer. So all I can do to solve that problem is tell them to prioritize excess resources and then go to these storage sites here and max out the desired wood. So what that's gonna do is basically make the transport carts ignore them as even this, okay, this one, ignore them as much as possible. So I get these two to transport this one, and these two, not transport, transport resource to this one to supply it. And so they're going to, as much as possible, get resources from these two. But also, you know, since these guys, I guess I sent them to chop too late, this one, and also in this current build, like the capacity of these carts is way too high. It's 25 compared to like 2 of the peasant, right? So this kind of made more sense when the peasants had like 10 capacity, but in this build I made it 2. So they're way overpowered compared to the peasants, and they exhaust this one way too fast. But again, there is some level of intelligence. So this one, when he ran out, he's gonna go down, he's gonna fall back to going to the nearest storage site to the one that he's supplying, right? So he's not gonna just kind of get stuck and give up. And I think maybe the logic, I forget which one I was following, but maybe the logic is like he got here and then there was some amount of resource here, so he's going back to get some. Anyways, I'm going to look a little more closely into that, but you know, that's how it's supposed to work.
Well, one of the first ways to come to know yourself is to understand that you don't.
And say another element is, okay, this one's already full of food, right? So this one can no longer be used as first let's drop off the resource, and then get him to supply. I think maybe also he's going to the closest one to there that has food. So let's do the exact same trick. Get these to 600 and or I think maybe okay, first let's get these guys out of here. So supply this one with food, and yeah, he's gonna get it from there. Yeah, which is the closest one that has excess. And if I really want to force him to go on this one, I can also set the desired amount of this one to the maximum. And I guess through this whole little fiasco of me, managing the cards, you guys see how, the gameplay is really gonna play out. And in a nutshell, this game is really, it's about the supply chain management. So in this game, you've got to be Tim Cook, right?
I mean, the future is now.
So I'm just going to take a step aside for a moment and talk about why I think it's actually a good idea to change up the RTS resource gathering mechanic the way that I have. Why I think it's actually going to make the game, more fun and not less fun. So one aspect is that just from the need to transport the resources, I think this is immediately going to add more depth to base planning, to planning the layout of your base, right? So say you have, gold in one corner, iron in another corner, and the wood is far away from both of them. Then when you're dropping your barracks, you're gonna have to decide, like, oh, do I want it close to the wood, where I can build it super fast? Do I want it close to the iron, where I can supply it with iron optimally? Or do I want it close to gold? Or do I want it somewhere in between? You're also immediately gonna need to be thinking about all the transport routes, all the supply chains that you're gonna set up. And as you explore the map and discover where all the resources are, and decide how you're gonna want to aggregate them, where you're gonna want to store them, from where to where you're gonna move them, you're gonna be needing to think forward a little bit and plan out your base that way. So I think that adds kind of an element of civilization into the RTS genre, right? Like in Civilization, you start off by kind of exploring the map and needing to decide like where you're going to place your cities and make these decisions. Like, do I want to be close, to a river? Do I want to be close to this luxury resource, this strategic resource? Kind of like that. Kind of add more of this decision making into the RTS genre. Another aspect is that I think this whole idea of supply chain management and kind of moving the resource around in real time, it's like a very interesting puzzle, right? So I think it's going to be a very satisfying feeling when everything just like lines up perfectly, right? You have in one location just enough wood, and a transport cart arrives and it gives you the perfect amount of gold, and then immediately you kick off your research, and everything just aligns perfectly, versus being super inefficient, right? Having stockpiles there, having one resource drop storage site be empty while another one right beside it be overflowing, and having the peasants to go further. So just having to juggle all this, I think it's just generally a pretty good puzzle. Like we see here already, right? This one has become full. I haven't managed it enough. Now these guys have become suboptimal gatherers, right? Their average gathering speed has slowed down, and more so, I think that this mechanic lets the map to be more of a puzzle board, right? Different maps can have different resources, laid out in different configurations. Like you can have one map where you have all the resources like right nearby. You can have another map where the resources are, super sparse, right? They're all over the map. And you can have, a third map where you have all the resources except one crucial one, which is, way off in the corner, and there's a very dangerous route from your base to that resource. And every one of these maps is going to play out differently, right? You're going to have to adapt to every kind of map and, set up different supply chains for every different kind of map. So in this video, I haven't really shown off too many examples of how you're actually going to use the resources, why you're actually going to want to aggregate them in a point. I've mentioned them kind of, research, unit training, but I'm going to say that for the unit training and, army creation, I also have some new ideas, right? Something that also I believe is, true to the spirit of classic RTS games, but, a little bit different in a cool and fun way, right? So I'm not going to reveal it just yet. I want to let the idea, cook a little bit more in my head, and I want to actually, implement it in the code, and probably in 1 or 2 devlogs, I'm going to be breaking it down, showing it off. So subscribe, hit the bell if you guys don't want to miss it. For now, I also want to finally, before I go, kind of show off two little things that I didn't show off. The first thing is here, if I click prioritize gathering and drop a storage site, then the peasants will immediately just get wood from the nearest trees, bring it to the storage site, and then finish building it right after. So in this way, basically, if you go to a location on the map that has all the resources you need for building a base, you can bootstrap a base that way, right? You don't have to bring resources across the map. You can just build it there, right? Just drop the build site, gather them, mine them, whatever, and in this way you can start a base in a brand new location. That I think is just kind of an interesting aspect of this mechanic that I kind of tacked on after, right? At first I saw I'm going to build another storage site here, and they start, ferrying resources from here to there, and I'm like, why are they doing that? Why not just, drop the build site and then chop the wood and then bring it there? It makes sense, and I think it also kind of adds for some more decision making, some more opportunities for building a base at kind of unfertile ground, so to speak. And one final aspect is, I showed you guys you can tell a peasant to mine, you can tell them to chop, but here's another kind of slightly interesting thing to do. So I set this storage site to, desire iron and gold, and I set these guys to prioritize gathering, and I have gold as a top priority and iron as the next priority. And then I tell them just to supply this storage site, and what they're going to do is they're going to keep mining gold until this one, say, reaches the desired amount of gold, which is 600. And as soon as, it exceeds reaches or exceeds that desired amount, they're going to switch to iron without you needing to baby them. So I think that's also another, interesting alternative way to give orders that's a little bit more high level, right? So you don't have to, it basically removes the need for, forcing them to, switch to gold when you run out of iron. Or you can do things like, okay, I only want 200 iron, grab 200 iron and then switch to gold. You can kind of do things like that, and they're fairly easy to implement, right? You don't have to fight the units to get it done. That's it. One last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show off, the scale at which the resource gathering is possible. So I already teased this at the very beginning of the video, but what you see in front of you is a stress map where I have exactly 1,000 peasants all gathering resources simultaneously in real time. And I made this map just to test the performance and do some heavy testing of the feature, but I also want to use it just to demonstrate the capabilities of the engine and the scale of which it's capable and the scale at which I envision the game being. So I want to really emphasize that I'm not making a MOBA. I'm not making one of those RTSs where you have like 6 units and in super late game you have like 11 units. That's it for this devlog. I really hope you guys enjoyed the content. Subscribe to stay posted for a lot more updates regarding EVERGLORY and Permafrost Engine. As well, I'm really hungry to hear any and all feedback regarding this new resource gathering mechanic. So if you have something to say, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know in the Discord chat. Let me know by email. And at the very least, I'll read about it and think about it. And potentially that feedback can influence the course of this game. Other than that, I'm just going to drop my per video reminder that Permafrost Engine, the engine powering everything you see here today, is fully open source, and something like 50,000 lines of C are available on GitHub today for you to download, study, modify, and have fun and do whatever you want with. So I hope you guys appreciate that fact. Drop a like, leave a comment, wishlist the game on Steam, and potentially pick it up for something like $9.99 when it finally does drop. For today, I'm gonna go, and as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Они кричали мне, твоя игра проиграна, корабли потоплены, убираясь в сопли, плевались воплями. И помню тех, кто, улыбаясь мне в глаза, кидал в спину камни. Да, времена на кассетных лентах, рэп-легенды, садовая, сквозняк, туса. Помнишь это? Не было больших бабок, крупных